So welcome to our SMSF update. This is Prime's update for our clients and anyone that might be interested in SMSF. And we're really privileged to be chatting here with our head of SMSF for both services and advice, Olivia Long. And Olivia has deep expertise within SMSF and has been involved with the industry in the space for a very long time. So welcome, Liv. We really appreciate you spending the time with us. And I think it is really a great benefit for Prime clients to have this internal expertise around SMSF. But tell me, we're at the start of a calendar year. We're talking about our plans for clients. We're talking about getting geared up and ready for a great year. Talk to me about what you're asking clients to focus on at the start of 2020.
Okay, so there's two key items to note that's sort of front of mind at present. The first is a change that was introduced on the 1st of January 2020, and that change impacts on all employers and employees. So basically, previously where an employee chose to salary sacrifice, so sacrifice part of their wage to superannuation, an employer could elect not to pay superannuation guarantee on the amount or the balance of money that was actually salary sacrificed.
Right. Okay.
From the 1st of January, this is no longer the case. Employers are now required to pay full superannuation based on an employee's wage, irrespective of whether they're salary sacrificing or not. So good news for employees there. The other key area that we're focusing on is SMSF trustees who are late lodgers or SMSF trustees that have prior year returns outstanding.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, from the 1st of October 2019, if an SMSF is late in lodging and hasn't requested an extension, it will actually be changed from a complying self-managed super fund to non-compliant.
Okay.
And the super fund lookup details will reflect that. So what that actually means is that employers won't be able to make contributions to your fund.
Right.
So you're going to impact on contributions going in, and anybody wanting to effect a rollover won't be able to do so until they rectify the status. So I suppose my key message there is if you're typically a late lodger and you don't take the ATO deadline seriously, it's time to get your affairs in order, respond to your accountants in a timely manner, because otherwise it's going to have a significant impact moving forwards.
Very good advice. Thanks, Olivia. So continuing with the SMSF theme, Liv, where do you see the biggest opportunities at the moment for clients, just with relation to their SMSF? Highlight a few things for us.
Okay, so with the introduction of the $1.6 million pension cap, recontribution strategies remain more popular than ever.
Yeah.
So basically they're used to equalise balances between members or move a member's balance into a more favourable tax position upon estate planning.
Yeah.
So for those people who don't actually satisfy a condition of release, we've got superannuation splitting between members. So basically, where clients can't pull money out and get it back in, another popular strategy is to allocate part of a member's balance to their spouse or to another member in a fund.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, you can allocate up to 85% of the taxed contributions going into the fund to another member.
Okay.
The downsizer contribution is another strategy that's still relatively new, but basically, if eligible and aged over 65, people can actually contribute any proceeds from the sale of the family home into superannuation up to a limit of $300,000 per member, giving those people and giving their superannuation a bit of a boost. And finally, from the 1st of July 2020, so not yet in place, but good news for people aged 65 and 66, they are now going to be able to contribute into super without the need to satisfy the work test.
Oh.
So what that means is that someone aged 66, as at the 1st of July 2020, can now utilise the bring forward rule to get more money into super, and they can now contribute up to an additional $300,000 into their superannuation fund, which they at present cannot do.
Wow.
So good news, I suppose the government are increasing that window of opportunity to get money into super.
Fantastic. So, Liv, every year there's a few must-dos and things that you absolutely have to make sure that you nail down. Talk us through, with 2020 being an important year, what are those must-dos? What are the things we need to look out for?
Okay, so on the ATO's radar, and something that's of key importance to self-managed super funds, is the investment strategy. So I'd suggest trustees take some time out, look at your investment strategies and make sure that your investments are actually in line with your strategies.
Yeah.
In fact, the ATO wrote to nearly 18,000 SMSF trustees last year because they held more than 90% of their super in one single asset,
Right.
asking them to review their investment strategies because of that reason.
Okay.
So a proper investment strategy needs to consider a few key items, the first one being the diversification of the fund assets. Now, if they're not diversified, and risk is another area, you need to actually document the risk of the fund, in particular if it has inadequate diversification. Liquidity and the return from investments is another key area to consider, as is the likely return from investments, and whether or not the returns you're generating from investments are going to enable you to pay your members their benefits when required. And finally, another key area is that SMSF trustees must consider insurance. Do they need to hold insurance in their fund? Do they hold it outside? What are the implications around insurance also? So my recommendation to people is take this time of the year to sit down, look at your investment strategy and make sure that it's up to scratch.
So Olivia, with respects to risks and how best to mitigate that within the SMSF environment, just run us through what you think are some of the key risks and some strategies with which to try to reduce that risk or mitigate it.
Okay, so probably the greatest risk to SMSFs at present surrounds non-arm's length transactions.
Yep.
So for example, where we've got a client that owns business real property and the business pays rent to the SMSF, it's important that that rent be at market rates and that any expenses incurred in relation to that transaction are on entirely commercial terms. So, for example, there should be a formal rental agreement in place.
Yes.
And trustees need to look at what market rents are to ensure that they're paying what is a fair and market rent. What the ATO are trying to do here is really to avoid people paying higher than market rent amounts to the SMSF, inadvertently trying to get more into super in that way. So to mitigate that risk, SMSF trustees really should just conduct an annual rental review, document the outcomes and keep it on file.
So now let's talk a little bit about some emerging trends or statistics that people might find interesting, specifically around SMSF.
So interestingly, for the past few years, more than a third of SMSFs established have been by people aged 35 to 44, and 17% aged 45 to 49.
Right.
So what's encouraging here is that at a younger age, people are realising the importance of superannuation and are taking control and effectively becoming more engaged with trying to make the most out of their retirement savings.
Okay.
So for many Australians, superannuation is going to be the largest asset after the family home. The sooner they realise that and become engaged, the better off they're going to be.
Very good advice. So Olivia, one of the other things that always seems to come up when you talk about SMSF is the ability to make direct investments into property. Just talk me through what are some of the key stats now and what are some of the trends, and you have mentioned previously that quite a few younger people are setting up SMSF, so you're seeing that that's partly related to property. Just give us a feel for how property and SMSF fit together and just what your view of that is.
Okay, so property definitely remains a very popular asset class, in particular direct property and business real property. So business real property refers to SMSF trustees who acquire a property and then rent it out to their business, therefore earning rent in the superannuation fund. In terms of direct property, I suppose some people just have this preference or this attraction to being able to touch, feel, look at an investment as opposed to the share market, or from a diversification perspective, having direct access to direct shares but also direct property and holding property in a fund can be very attractive.
Yes.
So property remains attractive. People who love investment properties and hold investment properties personally tend to also hold them in their super. But the fact is, a key benefit of running a self-managed super fund is being able to have direct access to that asset class.
Yeah. Now look, it's interesting, as you said, one of the things that you talked about was diversification. So it's obviously a balancing act between potentially having access to property investments, but also having that balance against other asset classes that might be more liquid and provide the right balance against that backdrop. So Olivia, we're now at that point where we sit down and we say, right, 2020, new year, we've got to focus on doing X number of things, key actions. Run us through what you think they are and let's keep it simple for people so that we can get off on the right foot.
Sure. So it's the start of a new year. Now's the perfect time to take stock of your SMSF and your investments. What are your investments? What returns are they generating? How are they performing? Do some benchmarking against markets. If you're not using an investment advisor, should you be? So are you actually generating the returns that you need to in order to provide for retirement? And finally, if you haven't heard of or you're not implementing any of the strategies that we've talked about today, perhaps it is time to seek proper investment advice, because those strategies really are some of the key benefits of running a self-managed super fund.
Yep. Great advice. Thanks a lot, Olivia. So thanks, Olivia, for the update. It's been really helpful to just listen through the detail of SMSF, and I think for our prime clients that that have an SMSF or are thinking about setting one up, it's really important for them to get professional advice, whether they initially talk to their accountant or indeed their financial advisor. I think one of the benefits of how Prime operates is the fact that we can do all of that under the one roof, plus the fact that we've also got the SMSF expertise internally through yourself and the broader SMSF team. So great advice about planning, strategy, being clear about what your responsibilities are in terms of being a trustee of an SMSF. So really, really helpful. Thank you for spending the time with us. And I guess my key call to action for our clients or anyone thinking about coming to Prime for advice is get the right advice up front and set yourself up for success.